Computer, voice mode, open email. To listeners, patients, and/or Clear Minds employees. First, I wanted to express my gratitude to everyone for being so patient. The good news is that we are back to our normal release schedule. I wanted to bring attention to the following people in this email: Alan Pierce, Peter Viviano, Willow, Michaela Jansen, Laura, Alexa Lynn, Kelly Harlan, Timothy O'Keefe, Yanai Ravid, Alex Peltier, and I have no standards. It is my recommendation that we keep an eye on these individuals for the time being. No plans to have them retired, anytime soon at least. For now, however, please enjoy this attached audio file. Signed, HW. Send email. Dark Papers Entertainment presents The Patient Files, Season 2, Episode 9. The Price of Friendship.
Right. So, for that file, I had the tags dangerous, object, and other, of which I filled out plant. Is that all?
Yep, sounds good to me.
Ooh. We might want to add a tag about reanimation as well. Corpses who came into contact with the leaves rose up to do the plant's bidding.
Ah, thank you. I missed that one. Okay, this one is good to go. You ready to read another one?
Oh, do we have the time?
I think so. Are you okay if we run a little over today?
Not at all.
I'd rather not. I got plans later.
So do I, actually. How about a short one? That sound good?
Yeah, I'm down.
Hailey, whenever you're ready.
Okay, let's see here. This one's pretty short. Hailey, recording for Clear Minds, Inc., Black Box Division. The date is October 19th, 2022. Project name CM-X-7532-AE. Project head, Dr. Angela Beckett. Field of study.
Wait, did you say Beckett?
Yeah, that's what it says. That mean anything to you?
Kinda. I met her in the city. Long story.
You met Dr. Beckett?
Lucky guy. She's lived around here. Word is she was here from the start of Clear Minds itself.
The company officially started in the 80s, right?
Yeah. She was pretty young then, from what I hear.
Even so, wouldn't that put her in her 50s, 60s?
In the city, she wasn't any older than her mid-30s. Maybe early 40s. To be fair, when we came across her, she was in rough shape.
Makes sense. City's weird when it comes to time.
More so in her case. The hospital she was at had a time dilation effect in certain places.
Still, would have gotten an autograph. There are a few research types that damn near worship the gal.
We're getting sidetracked. Hailey, if you wouldn't mind.
Right. Now, where was I? Here we go. Project head, Dr. Angela Beckett. Field of study, cytology, and developmental behavioral sciences. Report as follows. The clinic is up and running. At least, for now. It's small, leaving limited room for myself and my aides. Not to mention any patients. At least, any of real volume. I'll have to work on getting a larger space down the line. For now, though, it'll have to do. As much as I would like this report to be about my new findings on why I'm actually here, it won't be. So far, I've barely had enough time to get a control group established, let alone run any real experiments. However, one of my nurses had an intriguing experience that may interest a few of you back home. Sadly, she isn't able to write the report herself, and some of what I know is secondhand. Or pieced together after the fact. Natalie Holbrook. Handpicked, and one of the few people I trust on this project. The day started like any other. We all arrived at the office 2 hours before opening. Nat, Evan, and myself. Evan and Nat began the work on spinning up the various machines in the lab. I sat in my office, going through potential candidates for the control groups. Children from the ages 2 to 8, all born in the city, with special abilities that have yet to manifest. As it is common with most days, the rain steadily fell outside. As time passed, it became relentless. Suddenly, without much warning, the power cut off. Just for a moment, but something about it felt off. At the time, I tried to dismiss it. I attributed my unease with my experience before the city. The previous project was hell. Anyway, as mentioned, it didn't stay off for long. And with the hum of electronics, so did a sense of normalcy return. What I didn't know was, at the same time, Nat was just beginning the lengthy process of turning on the Theseus ship. Oh, I should explain. The Theseus ship is what we call the Cellular Transference and Integration Instrument. CTII didn't really have a good ring to it. The concept is the same. An experimental device that R&D whipped up. The idea is that it could potentially take cells from one living being and integrate them in a different subject. From there, they would continue to multiply as normal, without the body rejecting or attacking the foreign cells. If it worked, it would be a huge breakthrough. One of many of my goals here, actually. Back in our dimension, it doesn't work as intended, but maybe here, in the city, we can find the missing piece. I digress. Point is, the lenses on the inside of the chamber need to be changed every time it's turned on. They're highly sensitive and prone to break after a day of use. Not really a problem. HQ sent plenty, and requesting more isn't an issue. The important part was, Nat was changing one of the lenses when we lost power. From what I gathered, the exact moment we lost power. At the time, nothing of note happened. 2 hours passed and we began office hours. Which meant that the lab was closed, hidden behind a false wall of a supply closet. The everyday nurses, who remained unaware of the real purpose of the clinic, filed in and began their shifts. It wasn't until we were about halfway through the workday did something odd happen. Again, I wasn't in the room for this. Nat was seeing a patient, a young child with symptoms of a common cold. Of course, as it is procedure, she noted the child's age and weight, and performed a preliminary examination. Her notes mentioned the child's chances of ever developing abilities was low. At some point during all this, the potential subject fell, scraping one of their knees. What ensued was what you would expect. A fit of crying, followed by the distraction of a lollipop and a colorful band-aid. However, when Nat went to apply said bandage, the child's injury was gone. As if it was suddenly healed. This prompted Nat to redo her examination. An old scar, just on the back of their elbow, had vanished. She quickly wrapped up and personally dropped off the file to my office. When I read it, I immediately did a deep dive on the patient. From what I could see, there was no evidence that this random child could already be showing signs of any ability, especially not a healing factor of this scale. I, of course, made a follow-up call to the parents and scheduled an appointment for later in the week. During lunch, Evan noticed something about Nat. He made an innocent comment. You see, Nat always wears her lab coat, except when eating lunch. She's paranoid about getting any stains on the pristine white. Evan brought attention to her elbow. More specifically, to a small scar. A scar that until that day, she never had. This new fact was dismissed, which I understand. The elbow isn't a place we see every day or, for that matter, even pay attention to. For all she knew, she could have cut it months back and never noticed. And so went the other half of the day. Patients trickled in, were treated, documented, and were sent on their way. Only about 15% fit the criteria for the project. Which sounds like an impressive number, but we don't see many patients. The normal staff clocked out and went home, leaving once again just Evan, Nat, and myself. We, as usual, convened in the lab. By this point, all of the machines had plenty of time to be warmed up. If we were ready to actually begin Phase 1, this would have been a major complaint of mine. Most of the experimental devices take a full workday to even be operational. I understand it gives us plenty of time to run our cover operation, but still, I foresee this slowing research down in the future. Nevertheless, at this stage, we are still monitoring the equipment and making sure we can produce stable baselines. It was during one of these procedures that Evan nicked his finger, a small cut that drew blood. Nat immediately rushed to him and went into full mama bear mode, something she did often with Evan. He is 5 years younger, with round features and youthful expressions. She was always drawn to wounded animals. As soon as she grabbed his hand to inspect the injury, it vanished. Though at the time, I supposed transferred was the right word. Nat's finger suddenly split open and blood rose to the wound. I was busy repairing yet another sensitive part of a different machine when this happened. Although I know them both well enough to gauge their responses, Nat immediately yelped. Not from pain, mind you, but at the sight of her injury. Evan just stared at her blankly, confusion filling his features. Her sudden pained noise did get my attention, however. I looked up, saw she was fine, went back to work. Naturally, I heard my name being called a mere moment later. Annoyed with repairs, I gladly heeded it. There was this moment where I felt like I was the outside man of an inside joke. Evan stumbled over his words, and Nat just kept shoving her bleeding finger at me. The funny part was she wasn't upset or worried. She had this excitement in her eyes and a wide smile. She was fascinated by whatever was happening. It took a moment to gather what that actually was. I would be lying if I were to say that I didn't share her scientific curiosity. Somehow, when we lost power, Nat gained an ability. She was able to replicate what the Theseus ship was supposed to do. Whenever she touched someone, her cells swapped with that person, and for some reason, some incredible reason, she took on their injuries, their scars even. It was amazing. We immediately went into brainstorming and thinking what tests we could run. The most intriguing part was that Nat didn't feel it. The injury she took from Evan was numb to her. And then we, of course, discovered the scraped knee, which she also didn't feel. When the excitement wore off, we dressed her wounds, if you could even call them hers. We spent the next few hours just talking about what it could all mean, what we could do with this, what the limits of our newfound power were. Before we knew it, the sun began to rise and we didn't sleep a wink. With a collective groan, we realized we would have to do a full day shift and a clear mind shift back to back. It almost felt like we were in med school again. I insisted that Nat go home. She argued, of course. She always had a no man left behind type of mentality. The way she saw it, if we had to suffer through the day, she should as well. Normally, I would agree. But with her new ability, I wanted her to rest. Partly because she is my friend. And partly because, well, I wanted to run tests later. Evan and I watched the clock throughout the entire day. I didn't even look at potential subjects for the project. Night eventually fell, and with it came Nat. Evan and I watched her approach through the window. Her steps were jilted. We knew that walk. That was Nat's "I'm on a warpath" walk. As soon as she was inside, she sharply turned to Evan. Apparently, throughout the day, he was so consumed about what happened the night prior that, on numerous occasions, he found his attention returning to his finger, the same finger that Nat stole his injury from. During lunch, he discovered the small spot where he had been cut was numb, that he couldn't feel pain there. A fact he accidentally stumbled onto when he burned his hand while sipping some coffee. Nothing serious, but enough to notice. Since then, he has been testing it a number of ways. Inserting push pins, applying pressure, plunging it into ice water. The skin around it felt everything, but not that one single spot. Nat, on the other hand, felt each and every sensation. For the first time, a sense of dread fell over us. The cells were swapped, but for some reason, some horrifying reason, she could feel what happened to her original cells, even when disconnected from them. This transference didn't work both ways. Evan felt nothing when Nat picked at the cut. I immediately stepped several feet away. If Nat touched me, she would absorb all of my scars. I didn't want to be responsible for any discomfort in the future. We didn't run tests that night, or establish any baselines. Instead, we kind of just sat in silence for a while in my office. Then we went home and got some sleep. The next morning, everyone's mood improved. Now that we knew more about how her ability worked, we could operate around it. Nat wasn't allowed to see patients anymore. Too much risk. Not only for her, but for the patients. If they swapped cells, they could end up slashing themselves open and not even notice. We forgot to take one thing into account. Abilities grow. They evolve and become stronger with time or with use or maybe some other measure entirely. And for Nat, they grew rapidly. So rapidly. 2 days later, an elderly patient stubbed their toe on a corner of a table. Nat was on the other side of the room, nowhere near him. She just saw it happen. Instantly, she recoiled her foot in pain. The old man didn't even register the blow aside for the expectation of injury. Her stunned expression only hung in stasis for a moment before her eyes searched for mine, as if to say, "Did you see that?" From there, we quarantined her in the lab. It seemed like the best option. Transference through sight could quickly snowball. That's when I made a mistake. A huge one. At the time, we had no way of knowing her ability would continue to grow. That eventually she could steal scars through sight, that she would feel the initial wound that caused them. We didn't foresee the worst part to come, however. That, in time, a very short time, she would take the wounds of people she didn't see. That her ability would grow into an area of effect around her. That simply being near her would be enough to trigger this transfer. Not knowing any of this, I called for a consult. A trusted friend, one with whom I've had a complicated past. I called upon the only man I knew who might be able to help her. I called Dr. Gavin Olin. He arrived 3 days later from my perspective, but apparently he drove over as soon as he got my message. He asked to see the patient. By this point, the clinic was closed for the past 2 days. As I waited for his arrival, Evan was sent home. I led him to the supply closet, and as soon as he opened the door, did Nat let out the most horrible screams. Wails of pure pain that echoed in my heart and nearly brought me to my knees. Gavin realized before I did. He realized what was happening and immediately left the building. It took a very long moment for me to join him. Even outside, her shrieks pierced the walls in the rain. Desperately, I asked him what to do. He thought in silence for a while before answering me. He presented me with 2 options. The first was a kindness. Every ability has a ceiling. He figured that because of how fast hers grew, that it was most likely nearing its limits. There is no way of really knowing, however. Option 1 was to end her suffering. A morphine drip to usher her into the dark. Option 2 wasn't as kind. Keep her sedated in a medically induced coma. We would have no idea how much the painkillers would block. But if we went that route, she would still be alive. Still be of scientific value. Neither option seemed possible to me at the time. I didn't want to kill my friend, nor did I want to use her pain to further my research. I remember thinking, why won't she just pass out? The pain she must have been feeling. Gavin's pain, probably mine too. Anyone would have passed out. At one point, I thought she did. It wasn't until I made my decision and entered the lab did I realize she had screamed her throat raw. But her face was filled with so much agony. She couldn't even move when I approached. Her eyes wide, staring at the syringe in my hand. Did she wonder what was inside? Did she know what I was about to do? Of course she did. Nat was one of my closest friends. She knew. If there is a God, I hope it can forgive me. Forgive me for bringing her into all of this mess. Forgive me for what I decided to do. A week passed. In that time, I learned something. The transfer isn't permanent. Evan's feeling in his finger eventually came back, as did my old scars. About 2 weeks. 2 weeks is how long her ability lasts. I woke her once, just to see what would happen. All the injuries and scars went back to their original hosts, but Nat was broken. Her eyes were hollow. She retreated somewhere deep into her mind, afraid of the constant pain that I'm sure she still felt. But things I've been through, that Gavin has been through, that kind of pain leaves an echo, never truly leaving. It finds a way to settle into the bones. The mind may forget, but the body always remembers. That's the end of it. It's kind of heartbreaking, isn't it? She sacrificed her friend to further research. I heard Dr. Beckett was ruthless, but I had no idea. Oh, sorry, Dr. Talbot. I know how you feel about talking about files.
No, it's all right. Truth be told, I happen to agree with you. When I met her, I didn't get that kind of impression from her.
I know we're pressed for time, but how did you two meet?
I'll keep it brief. This file must be an older one of hers. By the time we crossed paths, she ran an entire hospital. At that point, she was kind of broken. The loss of her daughter was hard for her to process.
She had a child? That's news. She must have kept it from Clear Minds.
Wouldn't you? Luna had an ability.
Oh, you know what? That makes sense. All right.
Right. I'll finish up here and send these over to archives.
Thank you.
I'm not a kind of it. So, any floor in particular?
No, the one you pressed is fine.
You know, if it wasn't already running late, I'd be mighty tempted to follow you.
What? Why?
What do you mean, why? Look, I get it. You want to keep your professional life and your personal life separate. But you gotta admit, you're a bit mysterious.
I'm sorry. What?
All right, well, day one, you show up. You get straight to work. Then shoot down any attempts to get to know you. Hell, today was the first day in what, a month back?
28 days, actually.
Right, well, point is, I cannot imagine you having a personal life.
When I first arrived, I was in pain. It's not a justification for how I acted, but rather an explanation.
Now, Dr. Talbot, was that an apology?
No.
Apology accepted.
I just said... Whatever. Travis, can I ask you something?
Depends.
Why are you doing this?
Doing what exactly?
Working for Clear Minds. No offense, but you don't really seem the type.
Because I'm not a pencil pusher that enjoys paperwork?
Not how I would phrase it, but yeah.
Well, it's like this. When I joined, I was low level. No idea what Clear Minds is all about. But the pay? Now, that was something I was about. By the time I figured out some of the stuff that company gets up to...
You were in too deep.
Correctamundo.
But why the black box?
Why not? It's the safest damn job around here. Ain't no way I'm cut out for field work. Don't got the brains to do science stuff.
Okay, let me rephrase. Why did the black box accept you?
Ow!
Sorry, I didn't mean it like that.
Nah, it's alright, I get it. To be real with you, I just didn't break. I've been with the company for about 10 years now. Back when I started, they didn't have a lot of people willing to do the more unnatural parts of the job, black box included.
And those who declined retired.
Yep, even places like the black box can get to people. It takes a special kind. The trick is, gotta be able to accept all the weird, sad, and terrifying stuff, and just push that all the way down inside you. Just till you get to the point where you don't want to blow your brains out from all the repetition.
And be okay with the knowledge the project never ends.
Well, that too.
You ever want to do something else? If you could, that is.
Good question. Baker.
Really?
Oh yeah, I love to bake. Don't really matter what. See, there's biscuits, bagels, buns, muffins, brownies, cakes, cookies, crackers, pastries, pies, tarts, torts, which are a completely different thing. Yeah, it's relaxing. Imagine waking up, going to work, smelling fresh bread every day. Rye, wheat, French, ciabatta, pita. That's a dream. Well, what about you?
I'm sorry, what?
If you could do anything else, what would you choose? Follow the conversation.
I don't actually know.
Well, looks like we're here. I'm headed to the cafeteria. All this talk about food has me hungry something fierce.
Have fun. I'm heading this way.
Later, Chief.
When I gave you that card, it was for emergencies, not social calls.
Sure. It had nothing to do with me pestering you for weeks.
That was a factor, yes. What is it, Dr. Talbot?
My shift is over.
Good for you. Mine is not.
I can see that. What are you working on?
I have been tasked with improving field agent armor. As it stands, it is bulletproof, fire retardant, waterproof, has smart insulation to battle extreme cold, and can ground electricity.
That's already very impressive. What are you trying to improve?
Don't touch that. Don't touch anything.
Right. Sorry.
To answer your question, currently I'm working on giving the cloth some regenerative qualities. Should it be damaged, it would come in handy if it is able to repair itself.
Is this standard for all field agents?
No, just select teams.
What are you using to give it repair functions?
I'm glad you asked. We recovered a handbag that seems to multiply whenever a piece of it is cut off.
That's it. I mean, it's useful, but as far as city objects are concerned, it's really tame.
Well, it also compels the owner to murder people and wear their skin.
That's more like it.
The trick is removing this compulsion effect before applying its properties to the armor.
Yeah. Wouldn't want field agents just going around murdering people. I get it.
Sure, that is important, I guess. I more so value the challenge. I like puzzles. Speaking of, I ask again, why are you here?
The truth? I'm bored. I try to keep a strict policy to not befriend my staff. H. Gray is off on another mission.
And I'm to buy that you don't like being alone? Fine. Keep your secrets.
What about your staff? Every time I come to visit, it's just you.
That is by design. I get an alert when you use the card I gave you. I send them away elsewhere on this floor to attend to other projects.
Should I be hurt or flattered?
Grateful. My employees would love to dissect you.
Me? Why?
Is that a serious question?
Yeah, actually it is.
Because you're unique. You dove into the city and washed ashore. Your limited time in there is valuable. Who knows what bacteria you picked up or what you may have come into contact with. You've eaten its food, drank its water. Need I go on?
And that's valuable. You speak as if it's alive.
Perhaps it is. It fits the big five, does it not?
I don't know, does it?
Item 1. It can grow and develop. The city has been observed to add parts to itself and even improve on its design. Item 2. It gathers and uses energy. From what we can tell, this ranges from sunlight, like photosynthesis, but also from living creatures, whether they're buried in soil in its graveyards, or as direct assimilation through concrete. That one is more rare, but still. Theory is it uses this energy to perform what it needs to. Item 3. It can reproduce, if we consider a creature from the city its offspring, that is. Item 4. It can produce movement, evident by the shifting buildings and streets. Item 5. It's made up of cells. Everything in the city, at least every object, is not indeed what it appears. Something may look like a rock, but on closer inspection, it is not. At least not what we would expect. In short, it's organic. Just not in a way we have yet to understand.
That puts a lot into perspective.
It's just a theory. My theory, anyway. Others disagree.
Can't see why. It makes just as much sense as anything. Does this mean it has some sort of intelligence, or a will, perhaps?
Perhaps, perhaps not. It may be alive, but it may not be sentient. We currently have no evidence to suggest that it has any level of awareness or cognitive ability, nor do we have evidence to suggest it doesn't.
You seem to know quite a bit about the city. Why haven't you volunteered to go in?
It's precisely because I know so much that I can never enter.
Explain.
You ever wonder why you were sent in with zero information?
I have a few theories.
No doubt some of which include this company is malicious in nature.
Is it not?
The primary reason you were sent there was because you knew nothing. A lesson we learned with the first few waves of volunteers. The city, alive or not, actively fights to be understood. It doesn't play well with labels. Once something is defined about the city, it changes to oppose that definition.
That's not true, objectively. It has rules. The hunts, as an example.
Yes, and the fact that while inside you can't name it. Think about it, Dr. Talbot. A city without a name? Ridiculous. The fact we call it the city is name enough, yet...
It doesn't feel like a name. At least while you're there. It's like referring to someone by a placeholder. Like, you know it's not their name, but you just can't remember.
Correct.
That explanation is flimsy, at best. What about people like Dr. Gavin Olin? He has exited and re-entered the city on numerous occasions. If the city changes its rules based on the knowledge of those coming in, should we know next to nothing?
That is the most frustrating part. Yes, we try to keep some information from Dr. Olin, but he is a smart man. Next to me, he has the most knowledge about how the city functions. Yet, for some reason, nothing changes. He enters, and the established rules and boxes stay in place. With the small exception of a few cases, of course.
Theories.
A few. Dr. Olin is the exception.
To what?
Everything.
What does that mean?
Every time you visit, we somehow end up talking about Dr. Olin. Why is that?
No idea. Hey, what's behind this door? It's always closed. There isn't even a reader for a keycard.
That is my personal lab. It's where I keep some of the more volatile experiments.
More volatile than a handbag that compels you to murder people.
Much.
Oh, noted. You hungry? I'm thinking of grabbing dinner.
Sure. Not like I'm going to get any work done at the moment anyway. What are you feeling?
This is Dr. Talbot recording for personal records. The date is October 19th, 2022. I think you were right, H. Gray. Dr. Vita knows more than they're letting on. A lot more. Not just about the city. We already knew that. I suppose we already guessed they know more about Dr. Olin as well. I think we need to switch up tactics. Dr. Vita is starting to get suspicious, I think. They have a personal lab. With any luck, they might have files or something about Olin. Something we could use. At least, that's where I would keep it. Small issue. The access badge they gave me is... Vita set up an alert. Every time I use it, they know I'm coming. When I do, they send their employees away. We have to find a way to get past this. I'm thinking maybe we could clone the badge somehow. Get rid of whatever's causing it to send Vita alerts. even if we manage that, we'll have to figure out how to get past the researchers. I don't know. It's just a thought. I don't think Vita will tell me anything of real value, at least not about Olin. I'll include the badge at the drop point, along with this tape. I don't know, maybe you can do something with it. I'll need the original back, sooner rather than later. Now, about Donahue. You find anything yet? Or Graves? I know you told me to be patient, and that if he wanted to hurt Eli, he would have already. It's just... I don't like the idea of him still out there. I feel like we're just sitting on our hands while he is doing God knows what. Sorry, I don't mean to keep pressuring you. I know you're doing all that you can. Anyway, I'll talk to you soon. Be careful and stay safe.
Computer, voice mode. Open email. Subject, update. Despite my many recommendations to retire Charles, I would like to express that I may have been wrong. Today, the subject allowed us to talk about a file, after the fact. He also showed signs of becoming more relaxed around us. He's either genuinely letting his guard down, or he's getting much better at hiding his intentions. In either case, I suggest we capitalize on the opportunity. Perhaps we introduce a team-building event. In a controlled environment, of course. Once his walls are completely eroded, I may be able to learn exactly what he's planning. His visits to R&D is still a huge concern of mine. I'm aware Dr. Vita has your trust, so I won't air my personal grievances here, but we should revoke his ability to do so. The lab itself has many inventions and gadgets that could complicate things. I know it's not my job, but can I ask, why are you doing this? Old system works fine. And Charles is far too much of an unknown if he... No. Computer, delete that part. I await your decision about the team-building exercise. Signed, HW. Send email. Showrunners for this episode were Christopher George and Dalton Lewis. This episode was written by Christopher George. Script editing was done by Dalton Lewis. Sound design was done by Christopher George. Hailey was voiced by Abby Lunzinski. Travis was voiced by Kevin Lunzinski. Charles Talbot was voiced by Christopher George. Dr. Vita was voiced by Celine Gray. Original music by Nico from the Inky Paw Print.